It all started on a busy flight, where every seat was filled and passengers hurried to settle in. Among them was a young black boy, polite and soft-spoken, traveling alone with his boarding pass in hand. He walked down the aisle, carefully searching for his assigned seat, only to find it already taken. Sitting there was a white woman, confidently reclining as if the space belonged to her. When the boy gently explained that it was his seat, she brushed him off with a dismissive wave, insisting she wasn't moving. Other passengers glanced over, sensing the tension, but no one spoke up. The boy stood quietly, holding his ticket, unsure what to do next. The flight attendant soon approached, asking for the boarding passes to clear the confusion. The woman, irritated, loudly insisted she deserved the seat more than a child. The boy, however, remained calm, not revealing anything beyond the paper in his hand. What no one around them realized was that this was no ordinary boy, and this was no ordinary seat. The woman's dismissive attitude was about to backfire in a way she could never have imagined, because the boy's father wasn't just any traveler. He was the powerful owner of the very airline she was flying on. The flight attendant held both boarding passes in her hand, carefully comparing the seat numbers. Passengers leaned in, whispering, curious to see who was right. The boy stood quietly, his eyes calm but steady, while the woman tapped her foot impatiently, as if the entire matter was beneath her. She spoke in a sharp tone, saying she had traveled enough times to know she was in the right place. The boy, however, didn't argue. He simply waited, a quiet strength in his presence that few noticed. As the attendant confirmed that the boy's ticket was indeed for the very seat she occupied, a low murmur spread through the cabin. Some passengers raised their eyebrows, surprised by her refusal to move, even after the truth was clear. She crossed her arms and muttered something about priority and status, determined not to give up her spot. The boy didn't flinch. Instead, he adjusted his small backpack on his shoulder, as though he knew something the rest of them didn't. What no one realized was that this trip meant more than just getting from one city to another. For the boy, every journey carried weight, and this particular flight was tied to a story far greater than anyone around could guess. Suspense hung in the air. The cabin grew tense as the woman raised her voice, insisting she had every right to stay where she was. Some passengers shifted uncomfortably, while others pulled out their phones, quietly recording what was happening. The flight attendant tried to stay calm, explaining again that the seat belonged to the boy, but the woman refused to budge. She demanded to speak to the head steward, convinced that her status would protect her. The boy, meanwhile, remained strikingly composed. He didn't argue or complain. Instead, he simply stood with his boarding pass in hand, eyes scanning the cabin as though taking in every detail. His calmness unsettled some passengers. A businessman nearby whispered to his seatmate that the boy must be someone important, while a mother with her child frowned at the woman's stubbornness. In the background, whispers spread. How could an adult treat a child this way? Yet the woman seemed unfazed, more worried about her own comfort than the stares she was receiving. She held her ground, determined to win the confrontation. What none of them realized was that the boy was used to moments like this. His life had always been surrounded by quiet tests of patience and hidden power. This flight was about to reveal just how different he was. The head steward finally arrived, his expression calm but firm as he listened to both sides. He took the boarding passes again, double-checking the details, then looked directly at the woman. "Ma'am, this seat belongs to him," he said in a steady voice. Still, she shook her head, claiming she had paid too much for her ticket to be asked to move. Her tone grew louder, filling the cabin with sharp words that made even the nearby children glance up nervously. The boy didn't say a word. He simply watched, his posture steady, as though he had seen such scenes before. The steward, growing more serious, explained that if she refused to comply, the matter would have to be reported higher. That word higher sent a ripple of curiosity through the passengers. Higher than the head steward. Who could that possibly mean? By now, the entire front section of the plane was watching. Some whispered that the woman might be escorted off. Others wondered why the boy seemed so unfazed. A quiet hush fell when the steward leaned down to the boy and asked if he would prefer another seat. The boy gave a small shake of his head, firm, but respectful. It was clear he wasn't going anywhere. Something bigger was about to unfold. The steward straightened up, ready to press the issue further, when a sudden announcement came over the intercom. The captain himself requested to speak with the crew at the front. Gasps spread among the passengers. Rarely did the captain intervene in matters like this. The woman smirked, certain this would work in her favor, convinced that someone of authority would side with her. She adjusted her scarf and sat taller in the seat, almost daring the boy to try and claim it again. The boy, however, simply lowered his eyes and gave the faintest smile, as though he already knew what was coming. The steward exchanged a meaningful glance with him, one that didn't go unnoticed by a few curious onlookers. Whispers filled the cabin. Who was this boy, and why did the crew seem to treat him with such quiet respect? Moments later, the cabin door opened slightly, and another uniformed officer entered. He didn't look at the woman first, he looked at the boy. The shift in energy was immediate. The officer greeted him politely, almost formally, then asked if everything was all right. The woman's smug expression faltered. For the first time, she looked uncertain, realizing this situation might not unfold the way she had imagined. Suspense hung heavier than ever. The officer bent down slightly, addressing the boy with a respectful tone that caught everyone's attention. "Your father has been notified," he said quietly, but loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. The woman's eyes widened. She glanced around, suddenly aware that the stares aimed at her were no longer sympathetic but sharp with judgment. The steward then turned back to her, his voice firmer than before. "Ma'am, this young man isn't just a passenger. He is the son of the airline's owner. This is his assigned seat, and your refusal to move is not acceptable." The cabin erupted in murmurs. Phones clicked on, recording every word. The woman's confidence cracked. Her face flushed as she tried to protest, but her words stumbled. Finally, under the watchful eyes of the passengers, she stood up slowly, clutching her bag. The boy slid calmly into his rightful seat, thanking the steward politely. His composure only deepened the shock in the air. He had handled the entire ordeal with a grace beyond his years. Just as the tension seemed to settle, the captain's voice came over the intercom again. This time, he wasn't addressing the crew. He was addressing the boy directly, welcoming him on board with warmth. The entire plane now knew this was no ordinary passenger, and this flight had changed everything. As the plane settled back into order, the atmosphere shifted completely. The whispers that once carried doubt now turned into admiration for the boy's patience and quiet strength. Passengers exchanged knowing glances, some smiling at him with respect, while others shook their heads at how far the woman had gone before realizing her mistake. The boy simply looked out the window. As ever, never once showing anger toward her. The woman, embarrassed, took another seat offered by the crew. Though she tried to avoid eye contact, the lesson hung heavily in the air. It wasn't just about a seat, it was about respect, humility, and how quickly pride could collapse when the truth came to light. Many passengers would carry this moment with them, remembering the way the smallest figure on the flight ended up teaching the biggest lesson. The crew treated the boy with quiet care for the rest of the journey, though he never asked for special treatment. His dignity spoke louder than words. When the plane finally landed, passengers left with more than just the memory of a flight. They had witnessed how kindness and composure could outshine arrogance, and how true worth is never measured by appearances but by character.